Everybody, we are back. It is Taped on Live's favorite Raiders podcast, favorite Raiders channel, favorite Raiders everything. We are back. You guys already know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, subscribe. Hit the like button if you like it. Hit the dislike button if you don't like it. Leave a comment if you like it. Leave a comment if you don't like it. Also follow us on Twitter at the Mark John NFL for me, at mholder95 for Matt, and of course pandasubs.com. Hit Panda Subs up. TDL discount code for 35% off. All right, so today we got a special guest. It's Chargers week, so we got a little kind of a looking at the enemy type of thing going here. It's going to be a little different this year because there's no Derek Carr, so there's not as many jokes as made. It's not as fun, to be honest. It's really not. But but it's Chargers week, so we got my man Steve Haglund. He's from Guilty as Charged podcast. He's a great podcast over at the Chargers. Very very technical. They do a lot of great stuff, analytical film work. All that great stuff that we do, they do over there. So always a great mind to come and talk to us. So we really appreciate you joining us, Steven. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. It's a fun week. Justin Herbert was asked about the rivalry today, and they specifically brought up like the 80s and 90s. And he was like, yeah, I wasn't around for that, but I'm excited for the Raiders week. So things have changed a lot. We still got Sean Merriman out there throwing shots on Twitter. He's doing his best to try and keep the rivalry alive, and we appreciate that. And I'm happy to be here with you guys to talk about it today.
Yeah. I don't know. It just felt more intense when Carr was here. I guess because I don't know. It's just the thing about him. He's easy to get on Twitter, and people like to make fun of him on Twitter. So it's like it's a more intense thing. But yeah. So what we're getting to, just talk about the Chargers a little bit, and how they're looking this year. They're 1-2. Most people are going to talk about the defense and their struggles, but Kellen Moore in the offense, they actually are looking pretty damn good when I looked on tape this today. So let's start there. Let's start with some of your thoughts just overall on how the Chargers look, and how are you feeling about them after 3 games?
Yeah, I mean, we're really happy with where the offense is at right now. The skill supporting cast and Justin Herbert, it's hard to get better than that, but we all agree that Joe Lombardi was really holding this unit back, and really there were 2 main things there. Just like the lack of connective tissue with the run game was a big problem. They had some 49ers and Rams assistants on the staff, so they were trying to do like this wide zone rushing attack and then do it with like traditional like West Coast drops, and it just wasn't really like working well together. So that was a big issue. And then obviously, getting them to push the ball more vertically, that was the other issue. And right now, I believe Justin Herbert is 9th in ADOT among quarterbacks. They're pushing the ball downfield more often, including to Keenan Allen, which has always been a strength of his that Joe Lombardi never really took advantage, which I never really understood. And the run game, it's all tying together. It's more inside, more downhill, more vertical. And they are doing some traditional West Coast drops, and it makes more sense. So the offense is really performing at a really high level, and I think schematically Kellen Moore is doing a lot of fun things on tape so far.
Yeah. You had a question?
Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to ask you about Kellen Moore. One of the things, my wife's a Cowboys fan, so she was kind of happy to see Kellen Moore go. So I was curious, what's one of the things she kind of or a lot of people have gotten frustrated with is he's really predictable, like almost first down run every single time. I'm curious if he's kind of broken that tendency a little bit, and 2, is he still kind of getting a little too cute with it in some third down situations?
Well, the Chargers are near the top of the league in neutral passing rate, so I think that was pretty clearly a Mike McCarthy thing. Gotcha. And I think you'd be curious to get Cowboys fans' vibes right now with that offense, as they've turned Dak into a dink and dunk quarterback this year. So they're passing the ball early. There definitely have been some moments where he has gotten too cute, and we saw that on display on Sunday against the Vikings, and the worst moment possible where they're going for 4th and inches, and they did this like fullback dive thing to Joshua Kelly instead of using Justin Herbert. So that was a pretty frustrating moment. There have been some situational things that we have not been super thrilled with Kellen Moore, but he was hired for those 2 things that I mentioned, fix the run game, let Justin Herbert air it out. And those 2 things have been successful so far. And hopefully, we're learning some lessons in situational football, but this is a very positive step in the right direction so far for the Chargers offense.
So I kind of want to dive into Kellen Moore a little bit too. So Kellen Moore, what I really like about him is he's an adjuster. Like, he's not going to run one system. Like, I was watching the Titans game, and they're running Air Coryell stuff. They're doing 989s. They're doing all these Bruce Arians, Air Coryell stuff. Then I watched the Vikings game. They look more like a West Coast offense. So, yep. But at times, what I saw problems with the Cowboys is that sometimes the wide receivers wouldn't be on the same page. And I saw one play against the Vikings, like 2 guys ran into the same area. Mm-hmm. How do you see like the wide receivers adapting to that and didn't really be on the same page a lot? And is there any like kind of mistakes there a little bit?
Yeah, there was even a play where Keenan Allen like motioned to the sideline. He like wasn't sure what kind of route he had. And if you slow the route down, against the Vikings, they did a lot of like wide receiver screens, swing routes to try and, get them out of pressure looks, which they didn't never do. Blitz rate was crazy this week. I've never seen that in my whole life watching football. But if you watch this specific play, like Keenan starts out as if he's like going to run like another one. And then he like realizes that, like shit, like I gotta get out into an actual route here. And Justin actually ended up throwing him the football after like a little scramble drill. So it was funny. There was some of that, but that was happening like every single game with Joe Lombardi. Like last year, there were probably at least a dozen times where Gerald Everett and DeAndre Carter were like running into each other on the regular basis, So it was a frequent occurrence last year, and this year there's only been a handful of times for it. So some of that can be, I think, just chalking it up to this is the first time that Kellen Moore is coming in. And like you mentioned, the things are just really different. Like if you watch the Miami game, they ran pin and pull like at least 10 times, and it worked like every single time. So they're doing like pin and pull concepts. They're doing Y insert zone concepts. And then the next week, it's a lot of, like you mentioned, like super vertical, like 989. And it's been so much fun to watch as somebody who watched Joe Lombardi just run the same stuff just over and over and over again. And so the fact that Kellen Moore can come in and be creative and be adaptive to the game plans has been something that I've really enjoyed so far.
Yeah, I like watching on film too. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just kind of curious, more kind of getting in a little bit of personnel. Like I know you're talking about, varying up the run looks with Kellen Moore. Curious, like, with Austin Eckler out, or I don't know if he's going to be playing on this Sunday, like what does the run game like look like? Has it been different, or is it kind of the same thing? They're just recycling the backs.
It's been pretty similar. I mean, against the Titans, they didn't really have a ton of success, but nobody really does against the Titans. They managed a couple big runs. One of them was a pin and pull concept. This week against the Vikings, Daniel Popper of The Athletic tweeted out that they ran into 8-man boxes like 82% of the time. So Brian Flores had a very clear game plan of just like put everybody at the line of scrimmage. And it's just, there was no room to run. And it like became pretty clear pretty quick that they were going to have to do it through, Justin Herbert and his arm, because they were not going to be able to run him. What they did run against the Vikings, it was a lot more like shotgun concepts. And so they were trying to do some like quick hitter stuff that way to try and just, keep them honest a little bit. So there is some varied looks in there, but I think like the root of it is like under center, downhill, pin pull, gap kind of concepts. And I think that does fit like what Kelly does well, what Isaiah Spiller, who's their RB3, does well. Austin Eckler traditionally is not like a super like in between the tackles type, but I think he handled it really well in week 1. And we'll see what happens with him. He did participate in a limited fashion today. It didn't sound like he expected to be able to play when he was talking to the media. Obviously he's going to try his best to get out there, but typically the Chargers don't like to play players on an injury unless they log at least 2 full practices that week under Brandon Staley. So tomorrow, if he doesn't log a full practice, I think we can basically chalk it up to him not playing.
Gotcha. Good thing to look out for then. Appreciate it.
That's an interesting tidbit. Before we get to the main guy, the main runner of this offense, let's talk about the offensive line. The offensive line looks really good. They're 5th in pass block efficiency this year. They've been, they kind of, Zion Johnson's taking the next step. It looks like, of course, there's Slater, who's just a monster. He's a stud. Even when he looked like he was losing, he didn't lose, but it looked like it, but it wasn't a loss. So talk about the offensive line, their growth a little bit, and how much they're playing way better than they did the year before. Of course, the year before was a lot of injuries, but it still is definitely looking better.
Yeah, last year they dealt with injuries right out the gate, right? Like Corey Linsley missed week 2, he missed week 3, and then Rashawn Slater gets injured and tears his bicep. So Jamari Sawyer's out there playing left tackle when they drafted him to be a guard. This year he's at right guard. Trey Pipkin's the right tackle, who's I think a solid right tackle. I don't think he's like an amazing player, but he gets the job done. He's somebody who can hold the fort down there, which has been a really positive step up for him and for the team overall. But you mentioned Rashawn Slater, just like having him back healthy, it's such a treat to watch. Like we like seriously call it Slater Island out there, because it's just like not like that pass rusher over there is just like not doing it. Like Bradley Chubb in the 2 weeks against teams who are not the Chargers has been killing it. Same thing with Arden Key, and then against Rashawn Slater, they're just non-factors. So he's been a real treat to watch. Corey Linsley at center has been really, really solid for most of his career. Struggled a little bit against like Tier Tart in run blocking. Again, who doesn't? So if you do have like a more like physically imposing nose tackle, like he'll give Corey some problems in the run game, but for the most part, like Corey's just we know who the best defensive tackle in Las Vegas is right now, unfortunately. Corey's he's a really steady presence, and the two guards, Zion and Jamari, look great, man. Like they have responded very, very well, like run blocking wise. Pass protection this week against the Vikings, they were just nails. And handling all the stunts, the blitzes, everything like that. It's been fun to watch. So both of them really have kind of taken that next step at left guard and right guard.
All right. Of course, we'll just get to the big guy, Justin Herbert, who Matt is. He tries not to be a fan of him because he's been working. So I
try not to.
He tries not to.
I don't hide it well. I don't hide it well. I am a big fan of Justin Herbert. So
right, and then to me, just I like quarterback play, so I have to. It's a hate love thing. He looks really good. It's really undeniable this year. You kind of could tell that he has a quarterback coach as an offensive coordinator, a guy who's played quarterback. Yeah. He just looks. It's crazy. He's in a brand new offense, and it looks like he's been running for years. So, because I got to talk about this one play against the Vikings that he threw right between to Gerald Everett. I'm watching on film, and I'm watching Gerald Everett kind of just run on this crosser, and I see where the zone's opening. I'm like, he's not going to get there. He's not going to get there. And then he got there, and then he roped it in between two guys. Yeah. So I was like, "Oh, you know what, man? I don't want to watch this anymore." So, so he's playing really well. Talk about his growth a little bit. I mean, even when pass protection, he looks a lot better. He's pointing out blitzes, and the guys go like it was just a totally different guy. So how do you feel about his growth a little bit?
Yeah, I think this game against the Vikings was a real like inflection point for Justin Herbert, because if you go back and watch like some of the stuff in 2021, like the teams that gave him problems were teams of that like Patriots tree that will blitz a lot and do a lot of like press man and just throw a lot at you. I think the worst game of his 2021 season was against the Patriots that year. Threw 3 interceptions that day. Granted, one was because of Jared Cook, being Jared Cook. But it was cool to just see like that, the growth of how he was able to handle pressure. And it's just, again, I go back to this, like 80% of the time they're blitzing him, which is an absurd amount of money. An absurd amount of blitzes. And Brandon Staley mentioned this too. He's like, we blitz at like a 25-30% rate, and that's considered like a lot. And these guys are blitzing Justin 80% of the time. And so just seeing the way that he was handling protections and audibling and getting into hot reads, that's been a huge step forward for him. Kellen Moore has given him a lot of freedom, basically any freedom for him to check into any play. And that's not really what happened under Joe Lombardi. Joe Lombardi was very strict, very rigid. Like, we're just running my offense and we're running this play. And if it's like a terrible look, like you can check out of it, Justin. And like Corey Lindsey's going to handle the protections, and you just have to like run the offense. And so, he talked about it in training camp. Just playing under Kellen Moore has allowed him to feel more free and be allowed to like have more control and an ownership of the offense, which has been was a thing that people talked about. Like Keenan Allen went on one of the national media shows. I can't remember which one, but he was like, "Yeah, like we want to see Justin like take ownership of this offense and make it his." And so far, we've seen that. He's done a great job checking into the right plays. Like, in week 1, they came out in 12 personnel, and I'm pretty sure they were about to call a run. And he checked into an empty look, got Keenan and Mike on a post wheel route, and hit Keenan Allen for like a 35-yard gain. And he's just checking into the right plays at the right times, making the right reads. I mean, he was a 4.2 biology major. Like, he's so smart. And it's really starting to show up in like crucial moments for him to check into these plays. So it's been great to watch. I think if you really have studied Justin Herbert, I think you would agree that the Vikings game this past week was his best game of his career.
Yeah, it was pretty damn good. It was crazy. One, it was crazy to watch because I was like, why are you blitzing him so much? Like,
every other play, dude. It was more than every other play. It was insane. I've never seen anything like that from a defensive coach before. Like, even Greg Williams didn't do stuff like that. And he was like literally called Dr. Blitz. Like, it was insane. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, because I feel like even last year or the last couple of years, like Justin Herbert's been like really good against the blitz. Like, I remember a couple of games ago, or when was it, the one where they're playing like for the playoffs, the playoff game for the playoff or whatever. And I remember doing the research, like finding like, yeah, you just can't blitz Justin Herbert. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, to see him grow from that and that part of his game has been awesome to watch. So yeah. When I saw those numbers, I'm like, Brian Flores, what were you thinking? I don't know if you weren't watching tape or weren't looking at the numbers, but what I mean.
And like, but you see the Vikings defensive backs, so like every single time Justin Herbert is just dotting throws, and they're like, "What the hell do you want me to do? Like, what am I supposed to do in this instance?"
Yeah.
And then eventually they just started throwing it over their heads. They're like, if you're gonna keep playing cover 0 like this, I'm just gonna throw it over your heads. So it was crazy.
It was a lot of fun to watch.
Is there anything right now that he's not doing well? Like, is there anything where like you're like in the years past where like I know he had a couple of those, like, I don't know if it was like a hero throw or like a rookie mistake where he kind of end up throwing a pick or anything like that. But is there anything right now that you've noticed in the first 3 games where you're like, man, that's still kind of an issue?
No.
That's the answer I knew it was going to happen, but was hoping it didn't come.
Yeah, he's playing at a really, really high level, man. Like, it's been very impressive to watch. Like, there are definitely some just like moments of like him learning the offense and learning like what Kellen does. Like, there was one time against the Titans where he checked into a run on like a 3rd and 4, and they had Elijah Dotson in the game, not Joshua Kelly. Elijah Dotson is an undrafted free agent who's their current RB3 while Austin Eckler is out. And it was kind of like, what are you doing? Like that's just not like really what you want to do. So, you know, I think the thing with Justin Herbert last year and understandably so with like the rib injury is like people felt like he was robotic at times and people felt like he could take some more chances within the offense. And this year we're seeing him be more aggressive, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. Like on Sunday, there was this, they did like a post corner route with Quentin Johnson running a post and Keenan Allen running a corner route. And Quentin Johnson's open. Like it could have very easily been a touchdown, but Justin just like hole shotted this pass to Keenan Allen. And it was like a very aggressive, intentional, like I'm just like I'm going to show off my arm here and I'm just going to throw it to Keenan and put it in a place where only Keenan can grab it. And it's just, that's not a Justin that we saw last year. And again, some of that is the rib injury, which always seems to be forgotten about. Some of that was the offense, but he's just playing more aggressive, more free this year. And if you like quarterback play, you should watch the tape of Justin Herbert play quarterback.
I'll put it this way for all our Raider fans listening. As an Oregon fan, Justin Herbert played in a terrible scheme with Mario Cristobal and what they were running. And obviously in the beginning of his career, played in a terrible scheme with Joe Lombardi. Now that he's got like a decent offensive coordinator, it's scary. It's scary.
Yeah, it wasn't fun to watch for me. It wasn't fun. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Because I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on.
I think this would surprise most. Yeah, right. I think this would surprise most people. Sunday was his first 400-yard passing game of his career.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff he was doing against the blitz on Sunday. It was crazy.
Yeah, I just understand why.
He went 40 of 47, right? Did I remember that correctly? Yeah, I remember seeing that. That's insane.
Craziest game plan from defense I've ever seen. It was nuts. All right, so let's talk about transition to defense. Yeah. That is the side of the ball that's kind of been the struggle for the Chargers this year, definitely. And then, you know, it felt like at the end of last year, maybe there's a little growth, or there was some momentum this year that they probably might, you know, get a little better after the season. Michael Davis took a big step He got injured in the Jags game, and they gave up 27 points in a row. So, you're expecting some more growth from him. But, I don't know if that was more. He got Tyreek killed a little bit. Week 1, that was a buzzsaw game plan. And maybe this week, still some holes a little bit, but they did get some more stops this week. So how do you feel about the defense going forward?
Oh man, very opposite tune here for the defense. The biggest issue, right, is that they are allowing explosive plays at an exponential rate, and it is killing them. Because if you really zoom in on certain numbers and certain data points, the Chargers do some things pretty well. Like they tighten up really well in the red zone. They're 15th in touchdown percentage in the red zone. They're pressuring the quarterback at a pretty high level, despite not getting home at all on Tua, because Tua just has the quickest trigger ever. I think they're 13th in pressure percentage right now. Yards per game allowed and on the ground, they're 15th. So they've kind of solved the run defense, but they're allowing explosive plays basically 1 every 4 plays, and it's killing them. And there were moments against the Vikings where they seemingly had it under control. They got the Vikings into a 4th and 7, 4th and 8, and they were probably around midfield. They ended up allowing a 52-yard touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson. It's just at the worst moments possible, they're allowing these explosive plays. And if they just were 20% better at that, they'd be a league average defense, sincerely. But it's a huge problem. KJ Osborne diced them up a couple of times. They're getting torched by Treylon Burks and Chris Moore for the Titans for big plays. It's a big, big problem. And some of that is, I think, them trying to do a little too much schematically under Brandon Staley in terms of coverages. Week 1, they played man coverage at an 80% clip, which talk about a dumb game plan against the Dolphins. What are you doing? And then in week 2, it was a ton of quarters. So to go from heavy man to heavy quarters, I think it just kind of messed with the corners a little bit. So some of that is that. And then Michael Davis, JC Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr., none of them are playing well. Not a single one. They're all very, very graded out poorly right now. They're all allowing a lot of yards. And so it's frustrating that the problems from last year are kind of solved, but the secondary is just getting cooked right now. And that's a new problem, which has never really been a thing under Brandon Staley.
JC Jackson, he was a healthy scratch last week, right? Or was it 2 weeks?
He was against the Vikings.
I mean, is it that bad, or is it
So there was the legal situation, he
was
supposedly summoned to court and had an arrest warrant, but he was fine against the Titans. That was more Michael Davis was bad that game, and Asante was bad that game. So we were all kind of shocked that he was a healthy scratch. Sure. So that could be a legal thing, but Brandon Staley was asked about it today, and he's yeah, he's got to practice better. He's got to earn it throughout the week and just be more consistent. So he is coming off of a ruptured patella tendon, which has a disastrous recovery rate. But he was fine against the Titans. It wasn't he was an issue, but I don't know, man. It's a really tough situation in the Chargers secondary right now.
Okay, all right. But the defensive line is a little different. I'm sure you feel a little bit different. I mean, you got Thule, who just dominated last game.
And guy Thule.
Yeah, and then Khalil Mack is Mr. Consistent. Is he going to be overwhelming right now at his age? But he's going to be a consistent run defender. He's going to be a consistent pass rusher, and then of course Joey Bosa is just getting healthy. How do you feel about the defensive line? Because they had a pretty big week last week, and they kind of got a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins. But who hasn't lately? But it happened. They got some pressure, and then, so how do you feel about the defensive line?
Yeah, the defensive line has made a lot of improvements. Last year, they were so decimated by injuries, right? Joey gets injured in week 3, tears his groin. Austin Johnson, who was their best run defender, tears his MCL in week 8. Sebastian Joseph Day was injured. I'm forgetting a bunch of other ones, but basically the only healthy defensive lineman that played all year last year was Morgan Fox, who's their sub-package pass rusher. And so this year, they're playing at a really high level. They're getting a lot out of Nick Williams, who was a street free agent signing, basically that signed in right before training camp. He's playing nose tackle for them and playing at a high level. But the star, which is crazy, is Thule right now. Thule is playing at an insane level. they're using him as kind of like an amoeba stand-up rusher at certain times. And so they'll put him in between Morgan Fox and Khalil or in between Morgan Fox and Joey Bosa. They just isolate one-on-ones, and that kind of package is insanely efficient right now. So Thule has the most pressures of a rookie defensive end since Nick Bosa, and which is crazy to speak out loud. Like, I like Thule too, but I was not expecting this kind of performances out the gate. So he's honestly, like, Thule has been their best defensive player to start the season so far.
Yeah, he was when I was doing scouting for him for Police Report, I was stoked on this game. I mean, he was a dude who was super explosive. I mean, they had him USC. The only bone I had to pick was USC had him listed at 290, and they ended up weighing in at like 267, which was
USC had him playing nose guard against Stanford. I was like, what? Like, that was the first game I watched Thule, and I was like, this guy's an edge rusher. Like, what am I watching right now?
Dude, they would put him at linebacker and have him blitz. Like, that was one of the things when you were talking about it. I'm like, this is exactly what that was going to be my question for you, is like, how are they using him? Because he was used in so many different ways and was such a tweener. And like, to hear you talking about like, oh yeah, they're just getting creative with him. I'm like, it sounds like he's in literally the perfect system for him. And I mean, he's crushing it. So I'm happy for him. I mean, it sucks that he's playing for the Chargers, but yeah, I mean, he's having a good season. Is he playing on the first?
I think the best thing that Brandon Staley does as a defensive mind right now, in my opinion, is like what he does with the defensive line. Like the packages that he comes up with, the stunts that they design, the blitz packages, it's all like really high level stuff. So he's allowing Thule, Joey, Khalil to really just get after it. And like Marcus said, Khalil's not like playing at a super high level, but he's just consistently getting like 3, 4, 5 pressures a game. And he's playing the run really well. So they're getting a lot out of the defensive line. And that's like the only thing keeping them afloat on defense right now.
which is kind of interesting, because usually the last couple of years, the secondary has at least been solid, right? Even with the bad run defense, it plays solid pass defense. If they went against a really good passing team, they played pretty good defense that week. So that is an interesting flip for the year. So that is I don't know, that's kind of a weird dynamic to kind of flip in the third season in a system, and now these guys aren't playing well in the secondary, and it's on the defensive line. Yeah, I'm sure Brandon Staley's not very happy about that.
No.
All right, man. You got anything else for Steve before we get out of here?
I don't think so, man. I think you covered it. I think you were inside my head. You answered a lot of my questions while you were going without me even asking. So appreciate it, man.
There we go. Coming on the same wavelength.
Yeah. I already appreciate you coming on. Guilty as Charged podcast. Check out the preview, everything they talk about there. They probably talk about the Raiders all week. I mean, they got Raiders week and everything. Of course, we're gonna do some film breakdowns on Saturday. So just some, of course, do some Justin Herbert. Just don't watch it if you don't want to be upset. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say about it.
I appreciate you guys, man. It should be a fun game. They always are, even if both teams are bad or one team's really good when the other team's really bad. Chargers Raiders is always a great game, and should be a fun one on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my favorite rivalries in the division, so I'm looking forward to it. Always a good time. Chargers week.
Yeah, and you guys just stay home. You don't need to go to the game. Just stay home. You're good. Just stay in Vegas or Oakland or wherever you live. Just stay home.
I think it's like 60% Raiders fans already like vivid takes that. And like I don't really feel that bad, but it's always like, man, that's got to be disheartening. But now the Raiders are getting it in Vegas, so it's they get it on both ends.
I always say if Raiders week is 50-50, like I'm cool. Like I think that's a win. As long as we're not like 49ers Rams level, we're good.
Yeah.
So, but you guys listening to this show, just stay home. You don't need to go.
The ticket's just cheaper, man. There's a lot of it too. I'm gonna go to a Raiders game. I'm gonna go to one in LA because it's probably not $500. I mean, that's very true. All right. Thank you for coming on. All the listeners, of course, hit the subscribe button. Subscribe. Appreciate you guys for listening. We're out of here.